Welcome to Life Stories, where we share real-life experiences that teach us valuable lessons. Today's story is about Sarah, a successful self-taught day trader who, after years of financial sacrifice for her family, uncovers a shocking truth that changes everything. What happens when a daughter realizes she's been manipulated? And how does she finally stand up for herself? Stay tuned to hear how Sarah discovers the truth, confronts her family, and learns what it truly means to be valued. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to begin today's story. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and if I'm being honest, I've spent much of my adult life believing I was the successful one. The one who had it all figured out. At 33, I'd built a solid career as a self-taught day trader. No trust funds, no privileged background, just a lot of late nights, sleepless hours spent studying market patterns, and learning through trial and error. Everything I have, I earned. I never expected things to be handed to me. And I didn't need them to be. I thought of myself as independent, capable, and, above all, fair-minded. But life, it seems, has a funny way of showing you the truth when you least expect it. That truth came crashing down one Sunday evening, at what was supposed to be a casual family dinner. I had been at my parents' vacation home in the Catskills, where we gathered for holidays and special occasions. It was a beautiful, rustic house, one that my parents had worked hard to buy when I was young. I loved it there. It was where we made memories, my childhood summer days swimming in the lake, the cozy winter nights by the fire. It was supposed to be a sanctuary for all of us, a place where we could reconnect as a family. But that evening, everything changed. It started off like any other Sunday dinner. Casual conversations over a warm meal. The kind of easy chatter that fills the space between close family members. But as the meal ended, something shifted in the air. My father, usually calm and composed, was pacing across the living room, his face reddening, his fists clenching at his sides. His eyes locked on me as I sat there, still holding the property tax bill in my hand, an innocent piece of paper that I had been sent to cover, just as I had every year for the past 5 years. Sarah, how could you be so selfish? My father's voice erupted, his tone sharp, cutting through the comfortable silence of the room. I felt a jolt in my chest, the surprise freezing me momentarily. I was still trying to comprehend what was happening when my father continued, his words spilling out with frustration. Your sister needs that money for her new business venture. You have more than enough. You should be helping us with this, he shouted, pointing at the bill. His words hit me like a slap in the face. My hand gripped the paper tighter as I fought to maintain control. What had started as a simple question about the taxes on the vacation home had quickly spiraled into an accusation. It wasn't about the taxes anymore. It was about me, not pulling my weight, not helping out enough, not being there when my family needed me. My younger sister, Jessica, was sitting quietly next to our mother on the couch, her gaze fixed on the floor, almost as if she were trying to become invisible. My mother didn't speak. She never did in moments like this. Instead, she sat there, her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes avoiding mine, and that hurt more than anything my father had said. The silence from her side of the room made me feel as though I were invisible. Dad, I've been paying for everything for years. I finally managed, my voice trembling slightly as I spoke. I tried to steady myself, to make him hear me. The property taxes, Megan's car payments, Mom's medical bills, vacations. We never asked for anything in return. But he wasn't listening to me. He was too deep in his own fury. We gave you everything growing up, he continued, ignoring the calm in my voice. And now that we need you, you're abandoning us. Your sister is trying to make something of herself, and you're turning your back on us. Is this what you've become? I didn't know how to respond. The words didn't seem to matter. I had been giving for years, supporting them all in ways they'd never acknowledged. Never once questioning the expectation that I would carry the weight. But now, in the eyes of my father, I wasn't doing enough. It was in that moment, amidst the shouting and the confusion, that I noticed something that sent a cold chill down my spine. An envelope on the coffee table. It was half hidden under a magazine. But the words, trust fund, and Jessica Mitchell, were bold and unmistakable. My stomach sank. Before I could stop myself, I reached for the envelope. My father's reaction was immediate. "Sarah, that's private," he snapped, his face twisting in anger. But it was too late. I had already opened it. Already seen the truth laid bare in front of me. My hands trembled as I scanned the document. The reality of it setting in. $350. That was how much money my father had set aside for Jessica. Not a single penny for me. I'd spent the last 5 years paying for everything, covering the vacation home taxes, Megan's car payments, the roof repairs, the family vacations we took together, and I had never asked for anything in return. But all the while, my father had been quietly creating a financial safety net for Jessica. A trust fund meant to ensure her future was secure. It was a slap in the face. A betrayal I couldn't have fathomed. "When were you going to tell me about this?" I whispered, the question coming out almost as a breathless statement. A cold clarity washed over me. A deep understanding of everything that had been happening. The favoritism, the unspoken expectations, the way my father had always treated me as though I were self-sufficient, while showering Jessica with opportunities I never got. "You weren't supposed to see that," my father muttered, trying to take the document from my hands. But I had already memorized the numbers. The truth now seared into my memory. I had always assumed my parents' financial struggles were the result of changing circumstances, of different priorities. I had never wanted to believe that I had been undervalued, that my success had somehow made me invisible to them. But the document in my hands told a different story. It made sense of everything. I had been doing everything for the family, while they had been quietly investing in Jessica's future. "Don't you see?" I whispered, my voice hollow now. "This explains everything. All those times I needed help, when I was working 2 jobs in college. When my car broke down and I couldn't afford repairs. When I couldn't even get a deposit for my first apartment, you said there was no money. But the money was there, wasn't it? It was just earmarked for Megan." My mother's voice, soft and filled with that familiar, manipulative tone, broke through the tension. "Sweetheart, your sister needs more help than you do. You've always been so independent, so capable. We're proud of how well you've done on your own." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had been punished for my independence, rewarded for not needing help, while Jessica, who had always been dependent, received everything. It was twisted, and it hurt in a way I couldn't explain. The realization hit me like a flood. I had been paying for everything for so long, trying to be the responsible one. But all along, I had been an unwitting participant in my own exploitation. The realization that my entire life had been based on an illusion hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had quietly accepted the role of the dutiful daughter, the one who was always there, always picking up the slack, and always expected to give. I had told myself that it was just what family did for one another, that the sacrifices I made were necessary, that I was strong enough to handle it. But now, it felt like my whole perspective had been shattered. I stood there, holding the property tax bill, my fingers numb as the weight of everything crashed down on me. For 5 years, I had been paying the taxes on the vacation home, $8,700 a year. Year after year, without once being asked or acknowledged. On top of that, I had taken care of Jessica's car payments when she claimed she couldn't afford them. I had even covered the medical bills for Mom's knee surgery that weren't covered by insurance. I never hesitated. I never complained. It was just what I did for the family that I loved. But now, I was done. I knew in that moment that I couldn't continue this pattern of blind generosity, giving until there was nothing left of me. I needed to take control of my life again. The truth had been laid out so clearly in front of me, and it was time to face it head on. I wasn't going to let this situation continue. Not anymore. My father, still fuming, slid the bill across the table toward me, as though everything could just return to normal if I would just pay it again. "The taxes are due next month, Sarah," he said, as though nothing had changed. "You'll take care of it like you always do." I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel that automatic sense of obligation to make things right for everyone. I didn't feel the familiar tug in my chest to rescue them. To be the good daughter who took care of it all. No. This time, I was saying no. I'll take care of it, I said quietly, my voice calm but firm. I could feel my father's relief in that moment, as though the burden had been momentarily lifted from his shoulders. He didn't see it, though. He didn't see the quiet strength that had been building inside me. He didn't see the resolve that was slowly taking root. As I picked up the bill and tucked it into my bag, I could feel the weight of everything I had given over the years, those countless payments. The trips I'd funded, the sacrifices I had made for their benefit. The resentment had been growing in me, slowly but surely, and now it had bubbled over. I wasn't angry anymore, though. I was calm, but it was the kind of calm that comes with clarity, with the knowledge that change was inevitable. The drive back to my apartment in downtown Salt Lake City was a blur. I couldn't focus on the snow-capped mountains that I usually found peaceful. They just seemed to loom over me now, accusing me of my naivety. But as I got closer to home, the fog of confusion started to clear, and I felt a sense of liberation that I hadn't experienced in years. I hadn't realized how much I had been living in a fog until now. How much I had been conditioned to just give, to just be there, without ever considering whether or not I was receiving anything in return, except the hollow praise of my parents, who were too blind to see the cost of their demands. The cost had been my financial security, my well-being, and my peace of mind. Once home, I ignored the incessant calls and texts from my father, his voice full of worry, likely wondering if I would back out. I couldn't let myself be swayed anymore. I needed to stand firm in this decision. I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder that I had meticulously maintained for years, but never thought I'd need to use. Financial contributions. Family. I had kept track of every dollar I had spent on them, every property tax payment, every car loan I'd picked up, every bill I had covered. As I opened the spreadsheet, the numbers laid bare the sheer volume of what I had given over the years. $43,500 for property taxes on the vacation home, $11,680 for Megan's car payments, $12 for the new roof on the house, $8,200 for Mom's medical bills, $22,400 for family vacations, which had always been disguised as gifts from me. The total was sickening. $118 that I had poured into my family's needs. All while my parents had secretly built a trust fund for Jessica, the one who was never expected to sacrifice anything. As I stared at the total, I felt a mix of nausea and disbelief. All these years, I had thought I was simply doing my part, helping out, but now, I could see the truth. It had never been about family. It had been about manipulation. My phone buzzed, and I saw a text from Jessica. Dad says you're being difficult about the taxes. Don't be selfish, Sarah. Of course, she would take their side. She had always been the favored one, the one who received all the benefits, the one who had been told she deserved it. Why would she question it? Then came a text from my father. His words a command rather than a request. We're counting on you for those taxes. Don't let us down. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Of course, that was what it all boiled down to. They never acknowledged what I had already contributed. They never saw the years of sacrifices I had made. All they saw was what I could do for them in the moment. But not anymore. I opened my phone and texted back one simple message: I'm done. The following days felt like a blur. Each moment weighed down by the heavy decision I had made. I had made it clear that I was done supporting my family financially. But that didn't mean they would just accept it. I knew a storm was coming. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. It was only a matter of time before my parents and Jessica would come calling, trying to get me to return to the role I had played for years, the dependable daughter who never questioned, who always said yes. Sure enough, the messages and calls started pouring in. My father's voice on the phone was thick with frustration. Sarah, we need to talk. This isn't like you. The taxes are due. And the house is at risk. We're counting on you. His voice cracked with an almost pleading tone. But I was resolute. There was nothing more to discuss. My decision was final. That evening, I received a call from my mother. Her voice carefully modulated, hiding the tension that was bubbling just beneath the surface. Sarah, please. Your father is really upset. This isn't like you. We've always relied on you. And now you're just going to walk away? Her words, laced with guilt, stung. But I held firm. Mom, I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. I've always been there for you all. But this isn't fair anymore. I can't keep doing it. The phone call ended in an uncomfortable silence. The kind that felt like the space between us had grown wider. More distant. But it wasn't just that my parents were upset. I could feel the distance between me and Jessica as well. She hadn't reached out yet. But I knew she would. And when she did, it would only be to pressure me into paying the taxes. To ask me to resume my role as the family's financial safety net. Sure enough, the next day, Jessica called. Her tone was sharp, as though she had already made up her mind about my intentions. Sarah, she began, Dad's upset. The house is in danger of losing the taxes. And I don't get why you're making this so difficult. Why can't you just help us out like you always have? I sighed, trying to steady myself, to stay calm in the face of her anger. Jessica, I've always helped. I've paid for everything, taxes, bills, your car payments. But all this time, while I've been struggling, Dad's been building a trust fund for you. And you never even knew. It's not fair. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. And when Jessica finally spoke again, her voice was softer, more hesitant. I didn't know, she admitted. I didn't know that he was doing that for me. But, you can't just stop now. We need you, Sarah, please. Don't turn your back on us. Her words were a mix of guilt and desperation. But for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. I realized that Jessica had been just as blind to the unfairness of the situation as I had been. She had never seen the full picture. Just as I hadn't. But now, the truth was out, and it couldn't be ignored anymore. I'm sorry, Jessica, I said quietly. I can't keep doing this. I'm done being the one who sacrifices everything while you and Dad get the easy ride. You have to understand that. There was a heavy silence between us. I could feel the weight of our history. The years of unspoken tension and unacknowledged sacrifice hanging in the air. I didn't know it was like this. Jessica said finally, her voice quieter than before. I never questioned it. I just thought, well, you always had it under control. But I see it now. I'm sorry, Sarah. That apology, though small, meant more than anything I could have expected. It wasn't the fix I had wanted. But it was a start. It was the first step toward understanding. Toward recognition. I had been waiting for someone to see me. To see everything I had done for the family. And in that moment, I finally felt like Jessica was starting to. But the real confrontation was yet to come. A week later, I received an unexpected message. It wasn't from my father. It was from my cousin Thomas. Someone I hadn't spoken to in months. His message read simply, I overheard a conversation. There's a family meeting at your parents' house this weekend. It's about you. My heart sank. I could already guess what was coming. My father, in his anger, was rallying the rest of the family against me. He was trying to turn them against me. To make me the villain in a story where I had only ever been trying to do what was right. The truth had been exposed. But the fight wasn't over yet. You need to come, Thomas said in his next message. They're framing you as the one who's abandoned the family. You need to set the record straight. I knew Thomas was right. I had to go. For my own peace. For my own closure. I couldn't let this injustice go unchallenged. So, I prepared for what was sure to be the most difficult conversation of my life. I gathered all the documentation, every receipt, every bank statement, every text message that showed the years of financial sacrifice I had made for them. I couldn't let the family believe the narrative my father had crafted. This time, they would hear my side. The family meeting was a storm of emotions, accusations, and uncomfortable silences. When I walked into my parents' living room, the weight of everything I had uncovered hung in the air like a cloud. My father, standing by the fireplace, started speaking before I could even take a seat. He tried to make his case, his version of events, where I was the one who had abandoned the family. The one who wasn't pulling her weight. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. I opened my briefcase and calmly laid out the documentation in front of everyone, receipts, bank statements, and a complete breakdown of what I had contributed over the past 5 years. As I presented the numbers, the room fell silent. The faces of my aunts, uncles, and cousins shifted from confusion to shock. They couldn't ignore the truth any longer. My father's face turned a deep shade of red. But for the first time, he didn't argue. He couldn't. The proof was undeniable. Megan, sitting next to my mother, looked shocked, then guilty, then defensive. But in the end, it wasn't her I needed to convince, it was the rest of the family. And they were starting to see what I had been saying all along. The meeting ended with my father storming out, and my mother following him, tearfully. But something had shifted. The weight that had been on my shoulders for so long felt lighter. For the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling the crushing pressure of everyone else's expectations. That day, I learned something important. Family isn't about sacrifice without recognition. It's about balance, fairness, and respect. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only way to find peace. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more life stories like this.